And perfect. Hey, this is Augusta C. Foster. Welcome to another episode of the Mantalk Monday podcast. Today, man, I'm talking living legacy with Brother Jamare Bates. And man, we were doing the little pre-show. Just an awesome story. I'm a Black history person. I'm a Black dollars person. I am a legacy person. And I stumbled on to his Instagram page via a paid ad. And from there, it took me down an amazing rabbit hole. So, Brother Bates, thank you so much, man, for giving me this time.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here, and every opportunity I get to tell this story and spread the word, I love it. So thank you.
Awesome, man. So, before we go into history, I've gotta ask you, what made you decide to do paid ad? Because clearly it's effective. Because I'm here, and whoever's going to watch this is going to be there. What made you decide to be like, I want to invest in this? Like, y'all got to see this.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I had put out some reels and I've been trying to grow my page and I'm trying different things. And I had put out this reel and it was starting to get some views and it was getting some likes. And I said, you know what? Let me just see what happens if I boost it, right? Like they give you the thing all the time. They're trying to get you to do it.
Yeah.
And so, I said, look, let me just try it. Let me see what happens. And it took off. And for me, part of my goal is to spread his story. And so I'm looking for different ways to try and make that happen. And so it just so happened I said, you know what? I'm gonna give it a try. I'm gonna see what happens because it's not gonna hurt me if I try and it doesn't work.
Right. And I think you picked the perfect reel because, like I said, that paid reel, if nothing else, got me to not just follow you and follow the page, but go into the deep dive of, as somebody who considers himself like really, I enjoy history. It was my favorite subject topic. I had amazing teachers, foundation wise, early age, and even in my home and outside of my home. My father is a Juneteenth person. He's not a Fourth of
Yeah.
July guy. He's a Navy
Yeah.
veteran, but he's very much, we have a valuable history. And I always had that. So I never needed the outside validation to a certain extent, but just recognize like, man, we have such amazing stories. So when I clicked it and I went down the rabbit hole, I'm like, where's the YouTube? Where's the this? This needs to be. I said, man, I got to talk to this brother. So man, again, I'm glad to have you here, and I need you to tell people about George Eli Biddle.
Yeah. So I love to start with just, how I discovered him. And it's interesting because I've known about him since I was in high school, and I went to high school around the time when the movie Glory came out. I think Glory came out in 1989. If you remember Glory with Denzel
Yep.
Washington, Morgan Freeman, it's a classic movie.
Right.
It's a great movie. And so when I was in high school and we would talk about the Civil War, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, my great great grandfather was in that regiment," and people kind of would do a
Shocked.
double take. And so I had known about him for a long time. And I knew about him, but I didn't know him. And so I said, as I was older, I want to really kind of learn more about him because I wanted to be able to tell what his real story was all about.
Right.
And the more I learned about his story, the more I understood, wow, Eli Biddle was an amazing man. And it's not just what he did in the Civil War. I tell people all the time when that movie ends, they end in defeat. They
Right.
don't take the fort and
Right.
the movie stops. But that wasn't his story. His story didn't stop there. And so I found out that when he left the 54th Massachusetts, he went on to have this amazing life. And when I started to understand that his story didn't end in defeat, it
Mm.
made me want to learn more about him and then tell more about what his story was in his life and his legacy.
Awesome. And of course, want to make sure I get his name correct because I said George Eli and he's Eli George.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And I
Eli George
specifically,
Biddle.
yeah, I want to
No.
correct myself because I want to make sure that the man is honored correctly. Because I said, I was like, I'm saying this man has paid an innumerable cost and done things that the likes that you can only read in a book or as you stated in Glory. I'm like, I have to get this name right. I was like, I need to get this man's name right because he deserves it. So sorry, go ahead, brother.
No, I thank you. I thank you. And part of what I try to do is I want his name to be known because they're trying to erase our stories. They're
Right.
trying to delete. They're trying to downplay. They're trying to diminish. And so whenever they do that, we have to say their names. We have to make sure that we're not forgetting these incredible people in our history. And we have to say their names. We have to tell their stories. And so it's been a passion of mine. I started this Biddle's Tree Instagram page a couple years ago with the purpose of just spreading his name. I wanted people to know his story
Right.
and know his name. And so I can appreciate wanting to get his name. And, you know, when I understood what he did, you know, he was wounded in that charge of Fort Wagner in South Carolina. He was in the hospital for a few months, and then he came back to service. He was shot in the neck and the shoulder area, and he went back and kept fighting.
Mm.
And from that, he retired, and he went on to go back to Massachusetts, where he was from. He went to divinity school
At
Yale.
Yale. At Yale.
At Yale.
At
And I
Yale.
want people to understand that for a second, because he graduated from Yale with a bachelor's degree in 1893
as a black man.
as a black man.
Which already, I mean, you know, for people who understand the history and the context before all of your pre-land grants, you know, pre-land grants, back when you had literally, it would be insert directional college, school of color or school
Yes.
of colored people. Back when it was just, you know, I mean, I have jokes with people who I work with, specifically people who are graduates of Howard, and I go, it's the institution built for Jefferson's children. Like this is historically accurate. So to see, like, I read and I go, oh, Yale. And for a moment I go, was there a black Yale?
Yeah,
I'm
right.
Like, no. And I'm like, this brother graduated, not just, I want to make sure that people understand like the volume and the weightiness of this. It wasn't just any institution, because we were still trying to ping down the doors of any school. This is far before your pre-segregation. And he's at Yale, a school that's always carried itself with its Ivy League.
Correct.
And to see that this man, like Reconstruction era, this black veteran, I was like, he went to Yale? And I'm like, I didn't even know Yale had a school of divinity. So I'm like, he's the first divinity graduate. And I was like, this is all I could think of the entire time. I was like, I need a movie. But we'll get to that on the back end.
Yeah, right. So, and I contacted the school. I reached out to the school, and they gave me some information about him and about the time when he was there. But again, I want people to understand that there was almost 200,000 black men that fought for the Union. And Eli's mother had been a slave. She had escaped Virginia when she was 16 years old. And so she had taught him, and he had grown up knowing, even though he lived in the North, he knew what his brothers and sisters in the South were suffering through. And so there's part of his legacy where he enlisted in 1863. The war started in 1861.
Okay.
So in 1860, excuse me, he was only 14. He tried to enlist. He couldn't. His mom said, you know, you're not going off to fight. 3 years later, he lied and told them that he was old enough, and he enlisted when he was 17. And you can see on his enlistment papers that, you know, that he enlisted at that time. And so he fought through the last part of the war. And I can only imagine what was going through his mind when he went to enlist. And one of the most interesting stories about him enlisting really parallels some of the things that we're seeing happening today. So in Boston, in that time frame, every kid every day in school used to have to sing "My Country 'Tis of Thee," right? One day when he was in school, he refused to sing. He's like, I'm not going to sing this song because I'm singing about something that's not
it's not available to me. Yeah.
Right. Let freedom reign. Like there is no freedom. He knew that, and he refused to sing the song. And so he was suspended. They made him leave school. And that day was the day that he was walking around, and he saw, and he enlisted that day. And he said, okay, I'm going to go fight because you're trying to make me sing this song that's talking about freedom and the country and all this. No, I'm going to go fight for it to try and make it real.
Mm.
And that was really powerful to me because, you know, we talk about what we're trying to do now to just get fairness, just to get
Right.
justice. He was doing that same fight back then.
Mm.
And the things that we're going through now, right?
Yep.
The way that we're having to fight against oppression and we're having to fight against government systems that are trying to hold us back. He was doing that then.
Mm.
So many of us were doing that then. But we don't always know how long we've been in this fight. We sometimes believe it started with the civil rights movement.
Yeah, that it's fresh and it's new.
Correct.
Not understanding the root of this goes like I
It's
think
much
how I
deeper.
kind of reference for everybody off top. You take an opportunity. I told two great books for people to read: The Warmth of Other Suns and again Wilmington's Lie. Like you will see that it is your civil rights is we don't do an effective enough job providing our youth, not just in school, but even once they come home to know there's some really good history here that you need to seek out for yourself because it doesn't start in the 50s or the 60s. It's way
Absolutely.
before that.
Absolutely. And part of, you know, I'm just sort of talking in general a little bit about his history, and we can talk more detail because again, after the war, he's done a lot of things. But you know, just in terms of what the story that I want to tell, because when you mention children, you know, my daughter is in school and she just did her Civil War, you know, studying in fourth grade, and so she's bringing home her papers and stuff, and I'm like, make sure you remember that your great great grandfather fought for the Union, right?
Right.
You're learning about all of these, you know, all the typical names, you know, Lee and Grant and everybody.
Yep.
Well, Biddle is a name that you can bring to the class when you're talking about that.
Right.
But I purposely call the page Biddle's tree because of those roots. Those roots run deep.
Hmm.
And our roots run deep. They go beyond slavery. They go back even farther than when we were brought to this continent.
Right.
And I want people to really understand that it isn't going to be told to us. We have to go find it. And when we do, we have to tell more people about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think to your point, I think that's major because there's so many. I think we don't afford our children the opportunity to learn that because it's so much of it is we lean on the educators and the system to go, well, they'll learn there. And I tell the long short story of it is I had a teacher in the second and third grade. I didn't repeat. We always jokingly say she loved us so much she wanted us 2 years in a row. But a teacher by the name of Sharon Gaddis Wheeler, black woman, very much was part of during like that 60s hippie movement, Black Panther. And this was a woman who in the second grade told us, hey, listen, you guys need to know about H. Rap Brown. You guys need to know about Matthew Henson. You guys need to know about Mary McLeod Bethune. And these were all people who, you know, as we grew up, I recognized I learned more from that teacher in that 2 year span in the second and third grade from a historical standpoint about myself and my history and my lineage extended than I did any other year through junior high, college, high school, said, and then I had it at home. So I go, every kid isn't going to have a Sharon Gaddis Wheeler to where they go into
Yes.
class and there's a teacher who's passionate about a topic that even when you look at demographics for teachers, that might not reflect how that teacher looks, but they delve in and they see who the audience is and go, I really want them to recognize there's value in this and there's value in themselves. So I think it's amazing that you're doing it specifically with your daughter, telling her when they go in here and they tell you about these other people, tell them, and was what did Birdman say? Tell them put some respect on your name because you have some amazing heritage.
Yeah. And the more I studied him, the more I learned, you know, after the war, one of the things he did before he went to divinity school, he was a member of AME Zion Church when he was younger. And so when he came back, he ended up teaching Sunday school. And for those of us that have kids and maybe in you know, having them in church and understanding what they learn in Sunday school and how they're influenced by their Sunday school teachers,
Right.
that was really important to me. And so he was trying to teach children. And so I'm thinking about, okay, what is he telling them about his time in the war?
Hmm.
What the fight was like, and then that led him to become an elder and a deacon in the church. And then he went to divinity school. He became a pastor. And then he became the editor of a newspaper. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was, again, he was someone who made a newspaper and was writing. He was telling things with pen. He was he was printing. He was putting things on paper that were not only telling his story, but speaking to the injustices that he had seen and was still seeing even after the war. And
Hmm.
so when I went back and I started reading some of his words and reading some of the things that he had done, he was doing things with political activists. Some famous speakers would come of the day and they would come to speak, and he'd be interviewing them. He'd be writing in the newspaper. He was doing things with media. People forget the newspaper was the social
It
media
was
of the
it
day.
was it. It
You
was
know,
it. Yeah.
and so I found out that much of what he was writing were, there was a passage that he wrote about how the city of New York had been, since Reconstruction, all of the politicians were disregarding Black people, but wanted their vote. Black men could vote at the time when they were finally able
Right.
to vote, but they were disregarding their their constituents in terms of supporting them. They wanted their vote, but then when it came time to support them, they
No,
weren't.
no action on the back end.
Exactly. And the more I read what he was talking about, the more I said to myself, his story matters so much more now to
Hmm.
me because I have someone who's been in this fight before. And it really was, it gave me purpose. And part of the reason that you found that ad that I had put out was because I had done this interview in this magazine called Bold Journey. And the whole topic of the interview was, how did I find my purpose? And the thing that I tell people is that I started just wanting to tell his name. I just wanted people to know his name.
Right.
And that was my purpose. But then I said, okay, well, I want to write like he did. And so now I've written a book, I've written a children's book, and I'm in the middle of another book. And I want to write. I want to put more things on paper because I didn't set out to become an author, but now I feel like I have this passion behind me and I have this legacy that I want to carry forward. Uh, and I have not had any formal training in writing. I had never a background in writing. I have a background in engineering and construction,
Oh,
but
that's there. You're engineering and constructing sentences, ensuring that there aren't any dangling participles, ensuring that everything's subject, noun, verb, no predicate. You as somebody who does English, I think you're doing a great job. If you're an engineer, you can sort this out.
and I appreciate that because it's not my comfort zone, but it's important to me. And I realized that I'm I'm good at engineering. I can do engineering. I love telling my great great grandfather's story. I love talking about Black history. I love supporting Black businesses. You know, he had a newspaper, he's advertising Black businesses. He's talking about the community. He's like all of those things. I'm passionate about those. And so that was how the ad came about, is because it was really about purpose. And I found that in this increasingly digital, increasingly AI, increasingly disconnected world,
Right.
people are looking for authenticity. People are looking for purpose. They're looking for passion. They're looking for emotional connection.
Hmm.
And I want people to feel that when they hear me speak about him. I want people to read that when they read the stories that I put together. And I want to carry that forward because I believe that that's what he was doing when he was post-war veteran and trying to be a leader.
Man, yeah. I mean, I could agree with you wholeheartedly. Like I hear the passion in your voice, and I think it's great that you speak to the authenticity. is I think with the advent of technology, there's been such a strong move and shift and pivot away from not just authenticity, but to a certain extent, really laziness with creativity, because you could just lean on the tech. You know, you're also in the engineering space, so you wholly understand. Like, there are people who are putting together what they would consider passion pieces, and it's, hey, generate a 4-page book, and why it doesn't write the book exactly for them, there's really no heart in it. So you just have some computer that's taking random facts. So I'm glad that in a landscape that's very much at times fraudulent with storytelling, that you've chosen to tell a real passion piece that is a real passion piece. It's something that you have a desire to tell, so much to a point that you've exited your comfort zone of, well, I don't normally do this, but to tell this story, I'm gonna do it. Man, I absolutely love that.
Yeah, thank you. It again, it's one of those things where I had so my wife, we started a hair salon. She's a hairstylist, and we started it during COVID. And she specializes in natural hair, curly hair, and she was very purposeful in how she did her branding, and we worked together. And she didn't want her salon to be about just the transaction, just cutting hair.
Right.
She wanted her salon to be about making people feel the best that they ever felt. And she would have women come in, and they'd be 40, 50, 60-year-old women, and they would leave her with tears down their face. And they would tell her that they had been getting their hair done for their entire life, and this was the first time they left the salon and they felt beautiful. Naturally just felt beautiful in their own skin, in their own hair, and their own texture. And so when I saw that my wife had done this, and she had made something that was very purposeful and it had a passion behind it, I thought to myself, okay, what do I have that same level of passion for? Because if you find that, you hear the cliche all the time. If you find your passion, you will never work a
Yeah,
day in your life.
yeah. You don't have to be. You won't have to get paid for the thing that you love. Yeah, we people kick it around.
Right. But I never knew that until I found it.
Hmm.
And so part of this is me also telling the world there are so many things that we have as people. We haven't been taught them. We haven't been told them. We have to find them. They are out there.
Hmm.
And when you do, the pride, the power, the passion that you feel changes everything. I'm talking about my great great grandfather like he was sitting here in the room with me.
Hmm.
I have a son, and I can tell him about his great 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 grandfather. I can continue to tell that story, and my kids know. I've got my Biddle's Tree sweatshirt, my hoodie. I've got books in the house
Right.
of things that I'm selling. I'm going out and doing events, and I'm telling them about podcasts. They can carry that with them now,
Hmm.
because there's going to be a lot of time where they're going to be in spaces where people are going to be trying to make them feel less than. I want them to carry all of this weight with them. I want them to have all of that behind them, all of the legacy of the people, not even just Biddle, but even farther back. I want them to carry that with them. I want other people that read my stories to carry that with them. And again, for me, now that I've discovered this, it makes me want to tell more. It makes me want to talk about it more. It makes me want to find every opportunity that I can to let people know. Everybody knows Harriet Tubman. Everybody knows Martin Luther King. Everybody knows all of the names that we talk about in Black History Month.
The default Black History Month people. Yep.
Exactly. I want people to know Eli Biddle the same way.
Hmm.
And all of the other hundreds and hundreds of people that we have in our history that we just don't know about.
That's awesome, man. I think you're doing a great job at it. I like the fact that you reference even your children. Like, so we can move to, from a standpoint of, again, I hear it. You as a father, like, clearly you're instilling this legacy. Like, this is, I even go back to your great great grandfather, the fact that on a day where, in the moment where he's suspended for what they deem as defiance, he goes, I'm going to be the person who volunteers to actually exact change. I'm not just going to sit up and sing the song and go along with it. I'm going to go out here and actively do the thing that's going to lead to change. And his life and duty and service did that. Now that's carried over to you. Like I said, exiting your comfort space, volunteering to tell this amazing story. Now, even how you showed the merch, now your kids carry this. What is it in you as a father to where, like, not just the things that you do to make sure that they know, like, you are someone important besides this, but even instilling into them, know your heritage, know your history, know not just the story of Eli Biddle, but also these others. What are you doing to make sure that they know that and carry it with the same passion that you do?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, but it's one that I embrace wholeheartedly. And I reference my daughter, and she's going through her her Civil War, little worksheets and things that she's learning. I make it a point to read what my children are learning. They're learning about the Civil War, and I'm reading. I'm like, okay, what are they telling you about the Civil
Right.
War? What are they saying about it? Right?
What's the what narrative
What's
is
the
how
narrative?
how
Right?
was it the I always, I think with all of my kids when they've gone through, my oldest is 16, and I tell her about history classes. It's pretty much, I said, the perspective you're going to get is, there's a saying called "to the victor go the spoils," not just the riches, but that's who tells the story. I was like, so always remember, the perspective you're getting is from that person who was deemed as victorious in the moment. So you're not really getting the quote unquote losers. Like, you're not getting that idea. You're only seeing this frame from one way.
And I think it's important to have those discussions. When I sat down and I looked at what she was being taught, she's asking me questions, and I'm like, well, I want to make sure that you're learning it the right way, because sometimes
Right.
it's not going to always be taught. Sometimes some of the details are going to be left out, or people are going to frame the story in a different direction. So I think as parents, we have to do that. I think that's something that's just a structural thing that we all, as parents, if we want our children to have a solid historical foundation, we just have to be aware. We have to be aware, and we have to be intentional. We like, that word is thrown around a lot. But you have to be intentional, because your children have to know that it's important. They have to know that getting the story the right way and not shying away from the hard parts, they have to know that
Yeah.
that's important. I'm fortunate enough that I'm in the DC metro area, and we can go to the African American History Museum. For those who may or may not have had a chance to go, I highly
It's
recommend it.
amazing.
It's under attack, right?
Yeah.
It's under attack right now, and I've been there, and yeah, there's all of the true history is there. And if there are people that are trying to remove some of that because it's uncomfortable, well, those are the stories we have to continue to tell.
Right.
And when those uncomfortable stories come up, we have to explain that that was part of our story, and it didn't break us. And so
Right.
you have that in you. I was fortunate enough in the early part of my life. I was fortunate enough to go to Africa. Again, if you haven't, talk about a surreal sort of life changing experience. I got to go to Ghana. I got to go to Accra. I got to go to the Cape Coast Castle, and
Mm.
I got to go back through the door of return. And for those who may or may not know, when you travel through the castle, you can see the slave dungeons. You can see the fortifications, and you walk down through, and it's a very heavy trip.
Mm.
And you go through this door, and it's the door of no return. And that was where you were taken out. You were taken out to the boat, and you never came back. And so I was able to come back, and on this tour, they let you walk back through, and it's called the door of return.
Mm.
And so I was able to go back through the door of return. And in that moment, I said, okay, my ancestors can sleep now. They can rest, because I made it back.
Right.
All of what they had, making it across, surviving the war, Biddle getting shot, what he had to go through all the way down. The part of the reason why Biddle's tree is the name is because I'm just a small branch. The roots are from him. I'm a small branch. And so I try to tell my children that same story, that you have someone who's got strength in you. You're strong. You're not what someone's going to try to make you feel
Right.
weaker than you are.
Right.
I want them to feel that strength. We try to do things. We're very much about Juneteenth. We try to make sure Martin Luther King is known. We have Black history as an important part of our discussion.
Right.
Just whenever we can, we try to go to places where we can experience and talk to our kids, and I tell them all the time, it's unfortunate, but you're not going to learn this in school.
You're not.
You're
At
just
least
not.
the full to the full context.
Yes.
They'll give you the outer layer, but like an onion, the more that you peel back, all those peels, you're likely going to get either at home from your parents, maybe in college, or just through life experience, voluntarily wanting to go and seek the information.
Yeah. And so, I referenced my wife. She was a salon owner. And I tell my daughter about Madam C.J. Walker. We talk about her all the time. And we say, look, mommy's running a salon just like Madam C.J. Walker. We find those stories that our kids can relate to also. Even stories that are happening now. My daughter loves basketball. I talked to her about Gabby Reese. And I talked to her about the story about who she is, because she's living right now in a very important Black history moment.
Right.
So it's, I'm fortunate enough that I have someone in my lineage. I would tell everyone out there, I think the statistics, there's almost 2 million African Americans that have Civil War descendants, ancestors. Go do your research. You might not realize it, but you might have someone in your history.
And once people, I think, do their history, we took a trip to Tulsa, and it was eye-opening for me to take my youngest daughter there, because there's always you hear the story, oh, and it's Black Wall Street, and then you hear that, to actually get the firsthand account of them saying, this is Greenwood, and Black Wall Street, they labeled it a street, but like we had 97% of all of this.
Yes.
Like this, the theater, this, they were like, but it was shrunk down to even that, to be like, well, there's a placard here. And I was on the tour with someone who said, oh my gosh, they have the same weird spelling of this. And I'm like, in real time,
yes.
I met someone who was like, and they broke down, and I was like, in real time, this is a person who just recognized you had a relative who sadly was affected by the Tulsa massacre. But it was like, that's history. Yes. But a lot of people don't, like you said, most people don't, I don't think they take the time to really understand, it's now, again, with the advent of technology, I'm like, you can Google, if you have one of those names that are odd or rare, quite often you're probably related. Like, and it's just a little bit of research, but no, man, that's the making your kids understand. And then also telling other parents, like, to get off their butts and go do the research and read what your kids are reading, so that you're aware, so that you could give them accurate information. It's dead on.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing I'll talk about in terms of the way that I try to instill this in my kids is support Black businesses. We are incredibly, as Black business owners, we support other Black businesses. And so my kids know when we're going to a small shop somewhere, my wife is, a client of hers comes in, they've got a jewelry store. Okay, we're going to go to her jewelry store. Okay, another client comes in and she's got a dance studio. Okay, you're going to take dance at her dance studio. Yeah, it's a little farther, but we're going to go to her dance studio versus the other dance studio. So it isn't just history. And it's all of it, right? Yeah. It's like an ecosystem of different things that you can do to help instill that in your children. And supporting Black businesses, buying from other Black businesses, going to other cultural events, every little thing that we can do, again, just with intention and understanding that our children are being bombarded with all of the information.
Yep.
And so they're absolutely going to get the negative information.
Of course.
It's coming. And so if you don't combat that with the side of the story that we know to be true, they're only going to get that one side. And so you can't stop that other side from coming at them. And so my part to try and prepare them as best as possible is to make sure that they have the side that matters.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I love what you're doing because even in listening to you, I could think of, I turned 40 years old this year, and I remember being 9 and 10 and 11 years old, and my father constantly telling us, got to recycle black dollars. And being a kid and going, I remember we bought a black board game called Journey to the Motherland, and every Friday we played this game, but it was history, inventors. And if it were the museum, when California built the African American Museum, we were first in line. And even in hearing your voice, I'm like, man, it sounds a lot like Pops. And in the moment, you're in your early teens, I didn't understand it. And then as I got older, I recognized I repeated those patterns.
Yeah.
I recycled the black dollars. One of my favorite, free plug, True Detergent. Anybody who watches, please go support True Detergent. True Detergent is amazing. But I remember buying True Detergent even from my dad, and he said, this is black owned. And, Vietnam era vet doesn't shed a tear. But the look on his face was, he looked at me like, I taught you something.
Yes.
Like, this is you. Like you said, keeping that ecosystem and being like, this is you pouring it. This is how it starts, son. This is how you build. It might start small, but this is how we grow. This is how we last. This is how it extends out. But yeah, man, it absolutely resonates with me because I was like, you sound a lot like how my dad did. I was like, this is a Pops conversation. Like, you won't understand the value of this, but one day you'll be in a place where you absolutely do.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing I try to, my wife and I, we always say, our kids, they're going to grow up fast, and they're going to be on their own, and they're going to be making their own decisions. And all I want is for them to hear my voice in the back. I trust that they're going to be able to make decisions. They're going to make some good. They're going to make some bad. I just want them to hear my voice the same way that you hear your pop's voice. Okay. I just want them to hear my voice. And if you don't speak to them, if you don't tell them, if you don't put the foundation there, they won't hear it. And part of the reason why I chose to start writing children's books is because I didn't necessarily have books of kids that looked like me when I was growing up. My parents would instill in me, the confidence and the understanding of who I was, but not every kid has that. And I wanted to be able to put something on the shelf that for someone who's having a hard time talking to their kids or doesn't have the wherewithal, they can just say, oh, look, here's a great book. And they can pick it up and they can read it and they can help to instill that. Because we all need each other. We all need support. Not everybody has the ability to do, all of the things. We can't all do everything.
Right.
But if we're working together as a community, we will have all the pieces we need. We've got the bookstore, we've got the bank, and we've got the salon, and we've, just like you mentioned with Black Wall Street, Greenwood and Pine, and I forgot the A, right? Gap Band. But it was a community, right? Like, it wasn't just a street. It was the community. It was the banks. It was the flower shops. It was the restaurants. It was all of those pieces. And so I just want us as people to understand that we have everything that we need. If we just start looking out and connecting more, we have everything that we need. And our kids will see that. And we'll be able to carry that legacy and build forward.
Awesome, man. Well, Brother Jamare, man, I greatly appreciate your time, man. I'll get ready to wind it down. I love that you talked about the children's book. So I need you, because I'm gonna go. I don't like talking to people about topics and then not supporting. So anytime I talk to somebody, I always go, if you have a book or anything, and I tell people, oh, what's the link? What's that? Most of the time, I'm like the second or third person to go to purchase it because I like supporting Black dollars. And as I said, I continue to hear my pop's voice in the background of this is good ground, go sow. So what's the name of the children's book and where can they find everything?
Yeah. So the first book that I wrote, it's called Isaiah's Moving Day Adventure, and it's about a little boy whose father's in the military, and he's moving, and he's a little nervous and a little bit scared about moving, but with some family and some imagination, he has a great adventure, and
Mm.
finds out that moving isn't so bad, and you can actually purchase the book on Amazon. But I tell people, go to biddlestree.com. BIDDLESTREE, biddlestree.com. That's my website. You can buy the book there. You can learn about the reason that I'm passionate about what I do. You can learn about Eli Biddle and a little bit about his legacy and about what he did as a person, what was important to him, and then how it shaped what I'm doing. All of that can be found on biddlestree.com. And then if you're interested in more stories like this and some of the things that I like to promote, you can follow me on Instagram at Biddlestree Books.
Awesome, man. Brother Jamar, man, I greatly appreciate your time because I know, like we said, this fatherhood beckons, fatherhood calls. So, I know I'll let you enjoy the rest of your post vacation. But yeah, man, I greatly appreciate it. I love the history. I love the work you're doing. And I'm glad, man. I titled this Living Legacy, not even to be cliche, but after reading it, like everything in it where I heard you in the story, I was like, this is a man who is actively living out the legacy of a relative and carrying it in a way that he's determined to ensure that people don't just hear this story in his family, but that is like renowned throughout the world. And man, I love the passion. And again, man, I just thank you, man, for everything that you're doing. And I'm going to go to the website to buy it. I'm not giving Amazon my money.
Thank you. Yes.
I will pay the shipping. I'm not tripping. I will pay the fees.
Yeah, and Augusta, I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate what you're doing. I really enjoy the fact that there's this ecosystem now out digitally of people that are connecting and they're finding each other, and we're making things like this happen. So thank you very much for reaching out and connecting with me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Awesome, man. Well, Brother Bates, man, thank you again. This has been Mantalk Monday Podcast. Y'all be blessed and y'all be well. Peace. Thank you, brother.